Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Sounds of the Diaspora, Artist to Artist, conversation with yours truly, Dion Parson. I'm really excited about our guest tonight. I've been enjoying myself just studying up on this gentleman and learning about his upbringing. It's been so fascinating. Originally born in Paris, France, he grew up in Mali and Senegal. This gentleman is a amazing guitarist, educator, composer, and the author of a number of books. Please join me in welcoming to the Sounds of the Diaspora, Dr. Pascal Bokar Thiam.
Wow. Dion, you pronounced it perfectly.
Thank you. Well, I'll just shorten it and just go with Dr. T. How was that?
It all works.
It all works. Welcome to Sounds of the Diaspora. It's been we've been talking for a while to get you on the show, and it's really been an honor that you agreed to be on the show and share your story and your music and all the wonderful things you're doing with our audience.
Oh no, man, I'm grateful that you guys reached out. I actually owe it to John Faddis because he's the one who connected us.
Yes.
And it's a fabulous program. I got a chance to look back at your guests, and I'm really honored to be on the show and be a part of this project. So kudos to you for making it happen and giving jazz musicians and musicians of the diaspora an opportunity to tell their story.
Yes, I appreciate you saying that. It's something something that I felt was needed, and the opportunity came up, and I jumped at it, and I've been learning a lot. It's been a great opportunity personally to meet so many wonderful musicians, get to know them behind the scene, and to hear their story. And you have a great story to tell. I mean, here you are in San Francisco, but originally from Paris, growing up in Mali and Senegal, and you're well versed. I mean, all the things you've accomplished. I mean, can you tell our audience a bit about your upbringing musically?
Well, my parents met. My father was from Senegal, and half of the family is Senegal, and the other half on the other side of the river, which is the Senegal River, which in Mali we call Toliba.
Okay.
And the other side of his family is in Mali, like a lot of West African families. It's those borders were created, during the 1884 Berlin Conference. They were not our borders historically. And the French had decided that part of West Africa was going to be France. And as a result of that, they also thought that, well, if they trained young West Africans to go to college, that would make them better stewards of French interest in West Africa. And so my father was part of the first generation of West Africans to land in Paris after high school in the dead of winter in February to go to college.
Okay.
And that's, he goes to college the mid-50s. And that's a time where African Americans and the bebop revolution is hitting Paris in particular. Because my dad, who was a student at the university at Quai d'Orsay, Paris, met my mother because he was in his early 20s, which is usually the time at which you meet your wife. And he was in the jazz clubs every night. It's a really important time period because this is the first time Africans and African Americans reconnect since the slave trade.
Right.
And so he loved, my dad loved jazz. And my mom, she went to the jazz clubs. And my theory as to why my journey to teaching jazz is because we haven't done enough study on what happened to the brain of of a new of a developing embryo. Because I am convinced that it was because in, when I was kidnapped in my mother's womb for 9 months, and they played Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and Nat King Cole and Coleman Hawkins and Leslie Young, that it got in my brain, in the cortex, in the back of my brain. And when I was born, that sort of determined a whole host of things that I wasn't conscious about that was going to
Mm.
direct my. And so when we moved to Mali, my father was active in the independence movement. And when Mali became the federation and became independent in the late 50s, early 60s, my father was asked to come back to Mali so that he could work with the first government. At the time, Senegal and Mali were one federation.
Okay.
And that's why he brought me back and my mother. And so I was, a couple of years old. But at night, after having heard, the bebop of Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, at night for a number of years, I heard the sounds of the car, the sounds of the balafon, the singing of Maleke people, the singing of the Bambara people. And
Okay.
all of that, my brain was just taking on. I had no idea.
Right.
And originally, that music wasn't really what I was thinking about doing, but it hit me at some point. And that was later on, when we moved to Senegal. Because I really didn't like, to tell you the truth, I really didn't like jazz. My dad
Okay.
was playing, he was playing the modern jazz quartet, Sonny Rollins. The stuff was way too sophisticated for me. They were playing these long solos. I was like, what is it? I like James Brown because there was a beat. I could dance to it. Baby, baby, that I could deal with.
It was funky
But
and
the,
it was.
yeah, but the sophistication of jazz, it was eluding me because it takes a
Mhm.
while for your brain to get
Mhm.
all the nuances,
Mhm.
And eventually, I think in 1979, there was an amazing event that took place in Senegal that sort of shifted everything for me. There was a jazz festival, and that festival had been financed by the Club Med, which is a resort organization, and
Mhm.
they brought the top of American jazz to Senegal from October until June, if you can believe it.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we got to see everybody. And I remember in the Kenny Clark came and he
Mhm.
played with Dudu Jai Rose. We were talking about drummers
Oh,
earlier.
nice. Okay.
Yeah, there's some videos of that stuff somewhere in Senegal, the radio station, at the TV station. Roy Haynes came and played in Senegal. Stan
Nice.
Getz came. Stan Getz came and played in Senegal. We went to see Stan Getz, and he had 4 kids with him. Victor Jones was the drummer,
Mm.
and they told us he was 25 years old. Andy Bromberg was the bass player, and he was a teenager. He was 18.
Oh, wow.
The guitar player was Chuck Love, and he was 23. And Andy Laverne was the oldest of the band. He was 25, the piano player.
Mhm.
And I went with my band. We had a local band in Senegal. We were doing TV stations, and the girls really liked us. And
Mhm.
we thought we really knew how to play. And we went to see Stan Getz and this group of kids. And I was shocked because they were playing something that I knew made sense, but I didn't know what it was. I couldn't hear the forms of the song. I knew because in their playing there was conviction. Like
Right.
when you know a song, and they were speaking a vocabulary of improvisation that made sense, but I didn't know what it was.
Mm.
And in the back of my cortex now, all the things that had been sitting in the back of my head from the time I was pre-born started connecting. And I remember very vividly after that particular show, because I had a big afro, and I had a bandana, and I played with my teeth, the guitar. I was like the Jimi Hendrix thing. I had a wah-wah pedal and a fuzz pedal. After that show, I unplugged all these things, and I went to the next rehearsal of the band, and I said, guys, we cannot continue doing what we're doing. We got to learn this thing.
you got to focus.
I was shocked. It shocked me. And and so that was the beginning and the departure. Because after that, I said, I need to know where these things are coming from. Why is it that they know so much more than we do? And what is this language of improvisation? Because intuitively, I could hear it. Because, when you hear the choir players taking their solos, or you hear them on the balafon, they're doing all of that stuff quickly. I could feel it intuitively. I just didn't know.
You didn't have the information to organize it for yourself.
Exactly. And so I said, I've got to go and learn this music. And at the time in Senegal, it was an important time because there was a band that we really looked up to. There were a couple of bands, but one in particular called Halam.
Halam, yeah.
The Halam, yeah. And they were really important because they were older than us. Abdul Moop, the great percussionist, was a member of that band.
Yeah.
And I was a teenager. We used to go to the house where they collectively rehearsed and lived. And we were like teens, so they were like our older brother. They would see us coming and let us in, and we would sit in there. We would just watch their rehearsals, and then we would go and talk to them because they were our elders and say, "Can you show me this chord?" And can you, so because it's very communal, in the country, on the continent, it's communal, and so. They would starting to do a fusion of African aesthetics, but shifted into a contemporary language. And so they were really important. And I listened to them, and I decided to lie to my father because my father wanted me to go and be a lawyer. and in my head, I was not going to go there.
You had to switch over to really focus on music.
I was going to do music, and so I had to make up a story. And my mom, because on my mother's side, my mom is French, and all of her family is in France. So usually every summer we would spend a couple of months in France to be with our other side of the family. And so I had stayed back because I had some gigs with some local artists, and then I told my dad I was missing my mother, and he sort of looked at me strange, but he did buy me a plane ticket, and so I found myself in Nice. and when I got to Nice, I said I'm not going back, which created some kind of unpleasant times in the family, because in my family this is not what we do,
right?
And so I was very fortunate because Nice in the south of France had a national conservatory, and there was a dual track. There was a jazz track, but you had to take the classical track.
Okay.
And I remember going in the director's office and said to him, I'm really interested in joining the conservatory. I'm going to take the exam, but I don't want the classical track because I'm really in a hurry. I'm behind right now, and I really want to learn to bop. So I just want to do the jazz track. And I remember he looked at me, he started laughing. He said, well, Pascal, we don't really care how you want to do it. If you want to do the jazz track, you're going to have to do the classical track. So how much do you want to do the jazz track? I tried to explain to him, I'm in a hurry. I came from Africa. I'm late learning this thing. why do you want me to go play, you know? And but he didn't budge. But he was a wonderful man. And so
Mm.
I took the exams. I enrolled the class in the conservatory, the National Conservatory, and it was another shock because in France they start those kids very very early
Hmm.
because they track into the symphonic orchestras.
Right.
And so I was 18, 19 years old, and I had no idea. But I took the exam. I got in so they said, okay, you placing in this classroom, and they said go to 19B. So I go to 19B, and I open the door, and I see some little kids, and those little kids see this big black man. They thought I was a teacher, and, and I'm not the teacher.
The teacher, you were in class with them. Yeah.
That's right. And
Hmm.
so I got to sit on these little things, and the teacher walks in, and she said, oh, "You must be Pascal." And when I opened that door and I saw those kids, something said to me, "If you can't get in this classroom, you will have a career."
Hmm.
And I sat down, and the music teacher started with a dictation, a music dictation. She sat on the piano and started playing some notes which we had to write. And I didn't have a pencil. And here this big black guy was sitting in that room with all these little white kids, were like, 12 years old. And those kids, they were demons. I mean, these kids were great.
Hmm.
They could play Bach, they could play Vivaldi, they could play, and they were monsters on their instruments. They could read. And I'm sitting there, and that little girl was sitting next to me. She said, "Do you need a pencil?"
Hmm.
I didn't even have a pencil. And I'm like,
Right.
"Man, you are the archetype of the African." Which just I said, "Man, you better get it together."
Get it together
And
quick. Yeah. But you did. You did.
I did.
Yeah. So let
I
me ask
did.
you this: how did you, not to cut you off, but how did you ended up in America? Because I know you went to school in France and then you ended up in America in Boston. How did that happen?
So while I was at the conservatory in Nice, I was playing in the jazz clubs of the south of France because jazz was really prominent there, and so they had, which is the reason why Nice had that jazz studies track. And while I was there, I got picked up to actually work with a French jazz bebop player who had worked with Miles Davis and with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers in the 50s and early 60s. His name was Barney Willen.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, and so Barney was great, and I started working with him. And and while I was with Barney kept telling me, if France is too small, he said to me, he said, he was kidding, but he was right. He said, "You with me, I'm the top, and you have to go and play where the music was was created. You have to
Hmm.
go to the US." And
Okay.
and that's when I started looking at the Berklee College of Music because I had done my homework. The kids that were in Stan Getz's band, all of them, at the exception, I think, of Victor Jones, but maybe Victor went to Berkeley.
Hmm.
And so my dad, who was mad at me for not going to law school, when he found out that I was in the band with Barney Willen, and he knew Barney Willen from Barney's work with Miles Davis, because Barney Willen was like the French star
Hmm.
for jazz and bebop at the time. When I asked him, I said to him, I sent a cassette tape to the Berklee College of Music. I was admitted, uh, and I said, but I really need you to write that check.
Hmm.
And so he did. and
Okay.
that was amazing because he paid for me to go to school, and my mom made it possible for me to stay in France and not starve, um, and so that I could go to the conservatory in Nice. But my
Mhm.
dad paid for me to go to Boston, and so that's how I. And when I was there, uh, Berkeley was such a dynamic environment,
Mhm.
and all I wanted to do was learn bebop. That's
Right.
all I wanted to
And what
do.
year
I was like,
were you at Berkeley?
understand this.
What year were you there at the
I lost
conservatory?
you.
What
I
year
can't
were
hear
you?
you.
You can't hear me. What year were you at Berkeley Conservatory? Can you hear me now? No, I can hear you
Okay,
fine.
okay, go ahead. Now
Can you
I
hear
can
me
hear you.
now? Okay.
Yeah.
I, I was asking you, what year were you at Berkeley Conservatory?
It wasn't called conservatory then. It was called Berklee College of Music.
Okay.
Uh, they merged, I think, maybe 10 years ago. I was there in 83, 84, 85.
Okay. Oh, you were there. That was a hot moment. There was a lot of really talented cats that
We,
were there at the time. Yeah.
yeah, we were really sort of the last generation where the
Hmm.
real book was like the Bible,
Hmm.
because when I look at now, they have song rock writing or, the, you know, the recording department, engineering department is huge. When I was there, it was bebop,
Hmm.
and it was nothing else. And if you played something else, you were not well looked at. You
Hmm.
had to learn bebop. Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, that was it. You know.
Hmm.
So I, I, I was fortunate that at the time, I think when Greg Osby was still in and out of there. He was playing at a little club called Wally's, and I was at Wally's every night trying to learn this music. Uh, Bud Revels, the great saxophone player,
Hmm.
was at Wally's. Uh, Jackie Terrasson was trying to play the organ.
Jackie, yeah.
And,
I worked with
and
Jackie. Yeah.
yeah, Antonio Hart. In
Hmm.
fact, Antonio Hart. I think the last time I saw Antonio, I took him over to Roy Haynes' house because we were doing a session there. He was there. The trumpet player, Young, was there also, very young. What's his name? He passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh, Roy Hargrove.
Yeah, Roy was there.
Hmm.
Terry Conley, the great piano player, was there. Uh, I think, and that was a time where uh, cats were getting gigs out of Berkeley
Hmm.
because there was still a lot of band leaders who still had bands. Like Clark Terry had a big band, Buddy Rich had a big band, uh,
Hmm.
Louis Belson had a big band, and all our department heads came from those big bands. So Buddy Rich would call and said, I need three trombones, one bass, one guitar. Who do you have? And that's how
Hmm.
Cats would go. Art Blakey would do the same. Donald Brown was there. So whenever Art Blakey needed somebody, Donald would take care of that. The same. Billy Pierce, the great saxophone player, one of my ensemble teachers.
Okay.
So it was an amazing time.
Yeah.
Uh, the only thing that troubled me about Berkeley at the time is that because I came from Africa, where in the university system all the faculties are black, I thought naturally that jazz is a music created by the African American community. All the teachers would be black. And when I got to Berkeley, I was looking for black teachers. I was like, where are they?
Hmm.
And there were hardly any. And that really that started for me a whole host of things. Because originally, I had no ambition of becoming an academic. I just wanted to play the guitar well enough so that I could be in the pit orchestra in Vegas behind Sammy Davis or Frank Sinatra and marry a pretty cocktail waitress. That was the height of my ambition. I,
That was the plan.
I, I, I did not want to go to grad school. I had no interest in going to a doctor, becoming a doctor, an academic doctor. I
Mm,
just, I realized how disconnected the African American community was from its, from its heritage and from its ancestral traditions. I
mm,
realized right there and then the damage. And that's when I said, I've got to start writing
mm.
books because I know where I come from
Right.
and I know my traditions. These people of African descent, they need to know the power of their ancestry
Hmm.
because it's that cultural power that allows them to survive
Right.
the Atlantic slave trade.
Mhm.
And and so as I was developing as a musician and taking gigs here and there and traveling a little bit, I also realized why our teachers, who were a lot better than we were, had a day job at a college.
Mhm.
Because I'll give you an example. Roy Hens had picked me up. I was playing at Wally's, and he came and sat in. And then a couple of weeks later, he called and he said, "Why don't you come down to Long Island? I'm going to put some guys together, and I've got some dates that I'd like you to come and do in Europe." And so I took the Greyhound bus down to Long Island. He had a Bricklin, you know
Mhm.
the Bricklin, the car that opens with the back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we went. I went to his house and we practiced, we rehearsed, and then he said, "Okay, let's take a break. I'm gonna make you some tuna fish sandwich." So we go upstairs. He fixes us some tuna fish sandwiches, and then his phone rings, and he sits, he listens, and I see him, taking a pen and writing some things down. And he said, he hangs up the phone and he said, "Oh, this was Chick Corea's manager. I have 30 dates to do this summer, so I'm going to cancel my dates."
Hmm.
And that was like the end of June. I thought I was going to work. And all the wedding gigs that I had turned down because I wasn't going to be in Boston,
Hmm.
they were sewn up. I tell you, man, that was a long ride in the Greyhound bus back to Boston.
Right.
And I was like, wow, okay. So that's how jazz works.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
think you may have gigs and then they can get canceled the last minute. So what do? You have to work at Star Market or
Yeah.
Safeway or whatever. And so I started rethinking a lot of going out to, to try to get gigs because as a guitar player, it was very, very difficult because most vocalists use piano players because it's easier.
Yeah.
And so you have to create your own band. You have to get your own sound. You have to start fending for yourself because you're not like a bass player or some. You're not part of the rhythm section. You're sort of like the the add-on when there's enough money. Otherwise, nobody calls you.
You have to have multiple avenues of resources. That's the one thing. That's what I learned being in New York after I got there. I was fortunate to come to New York with a set gig with a number of jobs and tours, and while I was finishing up college, but I would sit in New York for a month without a tour, but then you had to go out and do the jam sessions, and then stuff would get canceled, and you will have local gigs. Somebody would call you for a week out of town, you cancel that, and then when you come back, those people you cancel on say, "Well, I already replaced you because you canceled on me." So it was a constant cycle, and which is smart with what you ended up doing because academia, like you said, there's a lot of musicians that just look at the bandstand as the only source of income, and they don't see academia being a viable source of income. And when I first got to New York, musicians that had a teaching job was still kind of looked down upon. But now, I think my generation was one of the generations to change that. And a lot of musicians that I came up with all have teaching jobs, or head of the department at some major university, or the chair of a department, and we're all still playing on a regular basis as well. So that security is important, especially when you have a family.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, once you have to, but also the thing, I think what we don't quite get is that when I was at Berkeley, you still had the fathers of this music.
Right.
Right. You had the Dizzies, you had the Clark Terry, you had the Art Blakey. But when they passed, my generation, we weren't able to pick up and carry that. We didn't have the work abilities. The clubs closed. The whole thing changed. The big bands disappeared.
Yeah. A lot of opportunities compared with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, also the entire culture of that music got lost. Because when I think about, can you imagine if a Duke Ellington or a Dizzy Gillespie or a Charlie Parker were department chairs at major universities, how many geniuses they would have produced?
Well, you're right about that. You're right about that. That's a whole nother thing. But hey, I really, this is a great conversation, and I'm learning so much, and you're sharing so much knowledge with our audience. But I really would like for them to hear some of your music, if you don't mind, because we could talk about this forever. But we got to get to some music, if you don't mind.
You got it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Again, you have a wealth of knowledge, and I definitely want the audience to hear all of what you have to say. So let's have a conversation with your music. And you have a song here. We're going to play the song first, but the song is called "Every Time I See You There." And this is a song that I smiled when I heard it because of the collaboration of musicians you have on the bandstand and the dancers and everything. So let's play it first, and then we can talk about it. Okay. Every time I see you there. Hey, incredible sound. We have one of our listeners says this is an amazing beat and incredible orchestration. And another comment came from the City College of San Francisco saying thank you for doing this. So some great followers, man. That's a great collaboration of interesting musicians. You know, you have organ, get multiple guitars, violin, drums, keyboards, sabah, couple sabah djembe.
I'm from Africa, man. You know, it's communal.
It's communal.
You know, my agent pulls his hair out,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell my agent, listen, and tell me who should not be in the band.
Right. I hear you.
You tell me.
There's a place for everyone.
You know, that's one of the problems. I mean, it's a large band, unfortunately, so that it's hard to move around because it's costly. You know, I'm not like a quartet, but if you want to get that energy, that spirit, you need the humans.
Yeah.
AI cannot do that.
Right.
We are AI proof.
Yeah, proof. I love it. But it's really nice. I mean, what you've done with the blues, with the African component, and then the dancers. The first time I saw dancers like that was in Dakar, Senegal, and I was just blown away with the movements and then the drums accompany the dancers. So as they move, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. What you put together, this is. I mean, I've seen Sabah parties and I've seen this stuff in Harlem, in the Senegalese community. But I'm happy to see you doing this on the West Coast as well.
Well, we'll come to the East Coast if we get an invitation.
We've come to the East Coast. Great. Well, let's move on. Let's move on because I know the audience is loving this. Some great comments. You're putting a smile in everyone's face. So this next song is called "Your Smile Inside My Night." Let's check this out.
I close my eyes, I see your smile. I see the sky and the rainbow. There is a bridge, it's made of clouds. The music of your words just rings and rings. Just let me tell you how I feel. Let me hold your hand tonight. Just let me tell you how I feel, baby. Let me hold your hand tonight. You are the smile inside my night. There is something about your eyes. You are the smile inside my night. There is something about your eyes. I feel the waves of memories. They crash softly inside my heart. Somewhere in me there is a light. Even the rain can't put it out. Just let me tell you how I feel, and let me hold your hand tonight. Just let me tell you how I feel, and let me hold your hand tonight. You all smile inside my nights. There is something about your eyes.
That was beautiful. Your smile inside my night. What's the concept behind that song?
Well, you know, I like metaphors,
Mhm.
and I thought when we sleep, we see a lot when we're dreaming.
Mhm.
And so when I wrote that song, I wanted a sort of a dreamy title. So I came up with that, and I wanted to feature the banjo. In the original recording, we had the sabar a little higher, and then when we decided that we wanted to get more airplay, we said, well, maybe we might want to lower it a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, but we wanted the banjo to be up front because people are not used to hearing the banjo in that kind of context. And I wanted sort of a lighter groove so that people could dance. Because when people come to our shows, my job is to make sure that they dance,
Right.
you know. And I'm going to bop, I'm going to scat, we're going to do all of that, but they have to move, they have to dance. Because that's the part of the music that's so important, you know. And when people dance, I mean, there isn't anything better
Mhm.
that you can do as a human being than create something that make people dance, you know.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Dizzy Gillespie used to say, man, when people dance, man, you've reached them inside. You know, he used to say that. You know, with the gesture, you reach deep inside, and he was so right. You know,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's part of our jobs to make people feel good with our music, and I think one of the challenges I'm seeing with jazz, as it is presented today, has gotten so intellectualized that the audience doesn't dance. It's just, and a lot of them walk away not understanding what they listen to. So part of our job is to make the audience feel good. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I think that's a beautiful thing.
I absolutely applaud that. I think it's really important. I think that music, there's two things. It's an art and it's a science.
Hmm.
Okay, so because it's an art and a science does not mean it should be disconnected from the people.
Right.
So we as musicians, we have to be able to perform things that people want to enjoy.
Mhm.
And so that's our job. Now, amongst musicians, we can complicate the music to the point where it becomes so cerebral that, you know, maybe that that's something that some musicians want to do.
Right.
But I don't come from that community. I come from a community where musicians you want to have a very high skill set, but your skill set is not to divide people. It's not to it's to bring people together, and there is nothing better to bring people together than music that people can dance to.
Yeah.
Now, amongst each other, we can play giant steps, and we can run it at 300, okay? Because there is that part. Because jazz was also the component that African Americans put on the map to say, this is what we are able to do. That come up to our level.
Right.
And that has its place. That has its place because the community, the African American community, had been put down for so long that through the art form of jazz, they were able to show the rest of the planet the high level of aesthetics that showcase their humanity.
True.
And that's what we and when Africans in America had the opportunity to display the power of their aesthetics, it reached people beyond races. It reached people to our collective sense of humanity. So that's why John Coltrane is so important. That's why and these are musicians who are very, very high level scientists. But they never lost that sense of space.
Right.
And they
they
never lost the blues. You can do anything, but if you lose the blues, you've lost the conversation.
Yeah, that's true.
Blues, it's the ingredient that binds our collective humanity.
Well, speaking of the blues, let's hear one more song. And everything you're saying is right, but I want our audience to hear the blues that grooves. So let's groove all night long. Let's check this out. Let's groove all night long.
All night long. Let it groove. All night long.
Let it groove all night long.
Let's groove all night long. I love it. So we have a question from one of our audience members. The question is, where does Afro bluegrass and blues intersect with jazz?
They're all part of the same roots.
Mm-hmm.
The West African musical traditions created both blues and bluegrass.
Mm-hmm.
The first instrument of the blues in North America is the banjo. The banjo is an instrument from Mali. It's called the Ngoni. In Senegal, we call it khala. That's what West Africans brought over.
Mm-hmm.
These ancestral West African tradition from the empire of Mali, Ghana and Songhai, from the 4th to the 17th century, informed the music that we call the blues in the Mississippi Delta today. So the banjo is a natural extension. It's really an important instrument because it is the umbilical cord to Africa, for Africans in America.
Mm-hmm.
The banjo allowed the musical traditions and the intuitive nature of the textures and the tonalities, blue notes in particular, to survive in a context where European music was dominating the conversation. We need to remember that it is European scholars who went in the cotton fields and heard Africans singing in the cotton fields. And the European conservative teachers are the ones who said, we recognize these tonalities, but they're larger. We're going to call them blue notes. Africans never called they just played their music. They never felt a need. In general, Africans never feel a need to define anything, probably because they were the first on the planet. So it never occurred to them that other people would come and define them. But the reality is that the banjo was the umbilical cord to Africa that allowed for these ancestral traditions of intonation and rhythmic concept, because ragtime, it's really important people remember that ragtime is what Africans in the plantations are going to do when the missionaries bring the piano. They're going to replicate the rhythmic patterns of the banjo on the left hand of the piano. Mm-hmm. That creates ragtime. I mean, most people think that ragtime came out of thin air or some marching. No. Ragtime came out of the syncopation of the banjo transferred on the left hand of the piano. So that is the banjo. And bluegrass. Bluegrass existed before. We have to understand in the United States the chronology of immigration, because people in Nashville think that bluegrass is Irish. It never was. African populations were on the banks of the Tennessee River 200 years before you had the big push of European, the people from the British Isles coming into North America. When these Irish populations, Scottish populations move into the Appalachians, into Tennessee, into Kentucky, they find on the banks of the Tennessee River these African populations who play the banjo, who've articulated the sound of the blues and the concepts of the blues. And this Celtic population asked these Africans, can you teach us that? There is not a single banjo in Europe, in England, in Scotland. And these African populations teach them how to play the banjo. The father, the godfather of bluegrass is a man of African descent by the name of Arnold Schultz. He's the one who taught Bill Monroe.
What's his name?
Yeah, Arnold Schultz. He's the one who taught Bill Monroe. Bill Monroe is considered the father of, but Bill Monroe always said, Arnold Schultz is the one who taught me how to play this. And so the guitar, the country guitar that we're hearing today in Nashville, that's Arnold Schultz and Leslie Reynolds. Chet Atkins said it. This is where I got it. So the music the music of the center of the country is born out of the experience of African tradition in North America. So whether it's the blues or bluegrass, it came out of the soil. And who was in the soil first in large numbers? People of African descent.
Right, right. Well, we appreciate that brief history. And like I mentioned earlier, there's so much more that you can share with our audience. And we will definitely be knocking on your door again to come back and join us. But I want to play one more song. I want to play one more song for audience because this is a really tough conversation because there's so much history there. But I really want the audience to hear the great things that you've been recording and performing as well. So let's check out this last song that you've shared with us, entitled "Song for Dizzy," and then we'll get back to you. Okay. That was "Song for Dizzy." That was song. Thank you, Dr. T, for sharing that wonderful composition with us. I heard the Savoy in there.
That's the great Chertai Rumbai. Aliou knows him quite well. He passed away, and it was great to hear him. And the other guitar, I'm doing the popcorn sound. But
Mm-hmm.
the other guitarist is the great Eddie Duran.
Okay.
And I had met Eddie when I had played with Dizzy, and I really wanted to. I had said to myself, if ever someday I can record, I want Eddie Duran in it. Eddie passed away a few years ago, but he was one of the guitar players who worked with Benny Goodman. And
Okay.
so it was fabulous to have him as a guest on that record. And his wife is on flute, Madeline Duran.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great. It's a beautiful song. It's really nice. It's just nice and relaxing. It reminds me of my time in Senegal, hanging out with Baba Mal and those guys. Just the colors and the ambience. It's really beautiful. Yeah. Well, I have to thank you for taking the time again out of your tremendously busy schedule to join us here, Sounds of the Diaspora, connecting a lot of the African, Afro-Caribbean, and Afro-American musical and cultural and traditional dots for us musically, because there's so many things that have aspired over the years, and everyone is asking, how did this come about, and where things came from. So there's a great opportunity here to share more information with the audience. So I really want to thank you for the time again, and we definitely will have you back. Who these folks here?
So these are my students. This is
Okay.
Jack and Justin, and check this out. They can play Donnelly on guitar and on bass.
Nice. Check that out. So, they got you guiding them. So that's what's going on.
Right? So the message continues.
The message continues. Dr. Pascal Bokar Thiam, it's been a pleasure having you on Sounds of the Diaspora, and we will see you soon again, okay?
Thank you very much, Dion. It was a pleasure and honor to be on this show. Thank you very much.
All right. All the best to you and your students. You guys take care. Keep up the good work. Yes, that was a great show. Very informative show. As you could tell, Dr. Thiam has so much information to share. We will definitely have him back, because we didn't even get a chance to talk about his books. He has some really amazing books out there. So we'll have him back. But join me next week as we bring to the Sounds of the Diaspora amazing drummer out of New Orleans, a dear friend of mine, Mr. Adonis Rose. We look forward to having him on the show and having you join us. Take care. All the best, everyone.
JBH Boutique Care offers you a unique exclusive membership in our nationwide concierge medical services network. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Judine Bontemps-Hill. I'm double board certified in family and obesity medicine. We pair exclusive personalized care with accessibility and convenience. A better way for you to receive immediate quality medical care. Whether at our main Orlando, Florida office, traveling across the U.S. or visiting the States, we bring you the best medical care without waiting for an appointment. Become a member today by calling 407-234-5282 or visit us online at jbhmed1.com. JBH Boutique Care is proud to sponsor Sounds of the Diaspora, music and conversations with artists, and host Dion Parson every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Source TV Radio Network, WTSN, Washington, D.C.